Welcome to Eye on the Illini. This is Mike Cagley. This is the big week, the top 25 matchup, the 22 Nebraska Cornhuskers against 24 Fighting Illini of Illinois. We have Kaleb Henry, who has moved away from his KLIN role and now is anchoring HuskerMax. Kaleb, how are things going since you have jumped over to the HuskerMax world?
Well, it remains Huskers to the max. That's
Yep.
exactly what it is, Mike. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a little bit of an adjustment as anyone who's changed jobs, changed positions, whatever. And I'm really enjoying it because for me, it is Huskers all of the time, from the time I wake up to the time I go to bed, and then even while I'm asleep, something happens in Husker Nation that we have to wake up and start talking about. But it is a lot more fun when you've got a top five volleyball team in the country who's chasing another national championship. And of course, the Huskers are 3-0 for the first time in several years. So it's nice to have success and to be able to cover that and be part of the media here in Husker Nation.
I tell you what, it is Matt Rule has changed how that team looks, how that team acts. It's a total difference. I thought Scott Frost was going to be a good hire. Clearly, I was wrong. But I also thought Matt Rule was going to be a really good hire. And I think of the young coaches in the Big Ten who started the last couple of years, of which there are quite a few, I think he and Kurt Signetti may be the best two of the crop coming up and what they appear to be able to get change in a very short period of time.
Well, and there's still a lot of people who have a sour taste in their mouth about the way it all ended with Trev Alberts and him going to Texas A&M. But you do have to, when you reflect, and maybe when we get far enough away from it, we're not laughing about the fact that A&M loses, and we get, as Husker fans, point and go, ha ha ha, look what happened to Trev. But reflect and find a way to separate that the same way we did with Scott Frost, separate what he did as a player to what he did as a coach, and the things that went well, the things that didn't go well. Trev Alberts, the things that went well as a player, and then to come back and the things that went well as an AD didn't go well as an AD. A thing that did go well as an AD for Trev Alberts is knowing that he wanted to bring in a program builder, someone that was going to utilize the transfer portal because that's the world we live in, but develop guys, make guys want to stick around. And as a matter of fact, as we heard on Monday from Coach Matt Rule, was that he told Ty Robinson, a defensive lineman, go make your money. And Ty said, no, I'm coming back. I want to be there. We just learned this week that Riley Van Poppel, a sophomore defensive lineman who contributed a lot last year, Matt Rule is planning to redshirt him this year and said, you can play 8 to 10 snaps a game, or you can redshirt and come back and be Ty Robinson next year when he's gone. So and then that's exactly what I think Trev did really, really well. Brought in a guy who's going to instill that belief in guys that they can develop and get better here and be part of a legacy going forward. So kudos to Trev for that one. We'll worry about the sour taste on other stuff another time.
Well, I look at Matt Rule just to dive into that for just a second. His first year at Temple, he was 2-10, followed that up with a 6-6, and then two 10-win seasons at Temple, which I didn't even know was humanly possible. Then Baylor 1-11, quickly to 7-6, then 11-3. Now Nebraska 5-7, and he starts off 3-0. It seems like once he hits that second year, it goes into another gear for Matt Rule.
Yeah, it really does. And I think so much of that is immediate cohesion. And now I think some of it, you can look at Temple and you can look at Baylor and say there's definitely a blueprint. I think he had a step up at Nebraska. One, facilities compared to those places, tradition compared to those places, just backing compared to those places. Nothing wrong with Temple and Baylor, just Nebraska's a different animal when you get to it. And that's for a lot of places in the country that Nebraska is going to be that. But there was the cohesion on almost everybody back from the coaching staff. There's rule changes now compared to then in being able to bring in some transfer portal guys. You've seen some first year guys come in and do extremely well. The red shirt rule, being able to play guys for 4 games and it not count as a season against them so that they can develop a little bit. being able to grab a 5-star freshman to come in and play into his second year. That's helpful. And then all the rules about how many staff members you can have and all of those things that you can have around a football program to make them a little bit better. The helmet technology there, it's a different world than what Rule was coaching in with Temple and Baylor. But he did have the blueprint and he adjusted it enough. And right now we're seeing Nebraska well on their way to make it a bowl game for the first time in several years.
Now, the only scary thing that I will throw out there to Nebraska fans is he's only stayed for 4 years. That's his longest tenure.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any nervousness when people see Dabo deciding not to use the portal at Clemson, or you see Florida State? You wonder what happened to Mike Norvell over the off season, or you hear about turnover at a place like in Alabama. Currently, we have to assume that sometime this season, Florida is going to have an opening. Is there a worry amongst Nebraska fans that he may have the opportunity to go somewhere else, or is that something that they feel like they've got under control?
Yes and no. You got to think, because he's a Penn State guy, what is it going to look like if ever James Franklin isn't there? And like that's the number one concern. But still, you hear Matt Rule talk about Nebraska in a way that he wants to be here more than 4 years. His son just is a freshman at UNL. You know, when you talk about the transfer portal and guys trying to be student athletes, whether you're an athlete or not, if you're just a student, transferring is not fun. Moving those credits, trying to find a major is not fun. So Matt Rule would have to deal with that specifically with his own family. And yes, the Penn State job, that would be a concern. But if you look at each move Matt Rule has made, from Temple to Baylor, from Baylor to the NFL, and no, it didn't work out in Carolina, but I think a lot can be said about Carolina not working out with whoever the heck is there.
It certainly has been that way, hasn't it?
Yeah. So, and then I guess you go from unemployed to Nebraska. Every single move he has made has been a step up. There's only a handful of programs. No, Nebraska hasn't made a bowl game since 2017, but there are only a handful of programs that are a step up from the University of Nebraska. And when you look at that annual conversation, the blue bloods of college football, Nebraska is still one of like 8 programs. Like it doesn't matter. Like the last 20 years have not been great, but Nebraska is still a blue blood in the game of college football at the highest level, unless it is an Alabama or an Ohio State. And honestly, I don't even think Alabama or, like you said, Florida is going to have an opening. Matt Rule just doesn't seem like an SEC guy. I know he was at Baylor, he was down in Texas, but he doesn't seem like an SEC guy. So you have to go, where would somewhere be like an Ohio State? Would he? I don't think he'd even go back into Texas, because so much of Texas is now either Big 12 or SEC. And I guess SMU in the ACC, however that's supposed to work. But yes, to make it short, yes, there is some concern, but it's only going to be 2 or 3 places to actually leave that concern.
That's fair enough. So let's jump over to the offense, give Illini fans an idea of what they're going to be going up against. Now, if you're going to talk Nebraska offense, there's some guy at quarterback that tends to get a lot of the headlines.
Heinrich Haarberg, he's a dynamic.
Wait a minute, he was a nightmare last season, so we don't like him.
I don't know if you caught the game this last week. Haarberg went in, he threw a pass, he got some run at quarterback. He was also the quarterback run. He also lined up at running back and ran the ball. And he ran an angle route out of the backfield. He also lined up split wide. He's being used as a weapon, but no, you are alluding to the 5-star freshman quarterback, Dylan Raiola.
Yes. And I love Rule, because this reminds me of something that Brett Bielema would do. You take a former quarterback, and let's face it, when you do quarterback drills, you're basically getting the ball thrown to you from another quarterback. Usually quarterbacks have great hands, because they have to catch the ball on the other end of a drill. It's not the hardest thing to figure out. So when you start using a quarterback who's athletic like he is, letting him run the ball a little bit. He can always throw a pass, letting him catch the ball out there. I mean, to me, that's just something that you have to game plan for, that you can hold safeties for another second. I think that's smart to throw them out there and make sure that everybody's got to spend, because the one thing you don't have infinite amounts of in college anymore is practice time.
And that's actually Matt Rule talked about that in post game and said, because he was talking a little bit about the Illinois game last year, and Harburg ran the option game because that was one of the games that he started in. That was one of Nebraska's 5 wins last year. And Rule said he would like to get more out of the quarterback run game, but all he has to do is put it on tape. 5 plays before it got into garbage time, and Harburg took over the quarterback position with Raiola hitting the sideline. There were 5 plays with Harburg out there that now have to get looked at. Like, you have to spend a time, even if it is watching the play one time, spending 2 minutes now going, okay, what do you do if you see him on the run onto the field and you go and he goes over here? But he was on the field for 5 plays over the first 3 quarters. All 5 of those plays were very different. And how do you have to game plan for every single one of them? And Rule said in post game, I don't need the plays to work. I need to put something on tape that opposing defenses have to spend 20 minutes a day on. And that's exactly what you're going to have to see the Illini work on this week, on top of what does Dylan Raiola do well at the quarterback position, and how does he orchestrate the offense?
This is the run my own business dream. This is the colleges paid for dream. This is the retire early dream. This is Busey, where your dreams and possibilities become moments through trusted guidance and expertise, through lifelong relationships. Because we're here to help you achieve the life you've always envisioned.
I totally agree with that. I think it's a smart move. That's the type of gamesmanship too. That's what allows some of these coaches to be a little bit better than their peers, because they are forcing that practice time. It's even more noticeable when you watch guys in basketball, because there's a reason why most teams only play one defense most of the time, because you don't want to practice multiple defenses. And if you have a team that has the ability to do that, then the other team has to change their practice time as well. Now, what Brett Bielema did, not nearly to that level, but he had Brandon Henderson, the sophomore offensive lineman, going in with a receiver number and being eligible on multiple plays. It was twofold, I think. One is that people are going to have to pay attention. Where's this guy at and what's he doing? Mm-hmm. And then the second thing is that was the same crew that Wisconsin wasn't forced to announce that their player had that and ended up scoring on it, costing Illinois the game. So Brett Bielema brought him in like 6 times just to make that team have to announce that there's an offensive lineman with a different number, just because Brett Bielema is a high-level troll when he wants to be.
I will say with both of those, whether it's Harburg or there's a lineman coming on with a different number, and whether it's announced or not, the helmet technology changes some of that, because someone in the box is watching for that, because you have so many coaches. Someone is watching for that. And unless they get run out there with under 15 on the play clock, you are in someone's head saying, he's there, we're doing this. And you can get those changes in immediately instead of a coach hoping to get someone's attention on the sideline and throw up a hand signal.
You still have to communicate it from the one guy to the other 10. Yeah. And the problem at Memorial Stadium with 80,000 people screaming, there's some challenges. So there's always going to be those signals for counter stallions to steal because of and I got to be honest with you, I really don't understand why. I guess maybe they don't want to pay for the helmets, but to me, couldn't you just put the thing in all the helmets and then just But anyway, that's I'm spending other people's money. So let's get back to the offense now. Dylan Raiola looks like Patrick Mahomes. He walks like Patrick Mahomes. It's not fair to say he quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes. I would dare say, though, that Illinois will be the first real test defensively for Nebraska. Not that I'm trying to say they won't be good, but they probably haven't faced a defense as good as Illinois currently.
No, and that's absolutely fair, because Matt Rule, as he talked about at his Monday press conference, is that the non-conference to him, he looks at as the preseason. You're supposed to go 1-0 each week, and Nebraska did. They took care of business. They're 3-0. But Illinois is not UTEP or Colorado's defense, which itself is its own kind of punching bag, or even Northern Iowa. Iowa, extremely physical, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They hit well defensively. They do a lot of good things for an upper level FCS program. I don't think anyone is describing Illinois as just an upper level FCS program. It's definitely going to be much more of a test. And Matt Rule said, now the season begins. Now you're into the conference, and it's a ranked on ranked matchup for the 400th consecutive sellout in Memorial Stadium, Nebraska's Memorial Stadium, because there's a lot of Memorial Stadiums in this country. You're right. Illinois' defense is going to be something that Nebraska hasn't seen yet this year, and young Dylan Raiola has not seen this year. How does he handle this test?
So he's got a running game behind him. What does Nebraska have that Illini fans are going to have to be prepared to watch on Friday night on Fox national TV?
Dante Dowdell, number one running back out of the backfield. Now, you'll see if anyone looks at any of the depth chart stuff, it lists Ramir Johnson first, and it says, or Dante Dowdell. Ramir Johnson, a little bit shiftier, a little bit better receiving back. Not that Dante Dowdell can't do that, but Dowdell, the transfer in from Oregon. So he got to run over Colorado last year, and then he got to run over Colorado this year. As a matter of fact, one of Colorado's defensive backs, Shiloh Sanders, broke his arm attempting to tackle Dowdell in the first quarter of the game a couple of weeks ago. He is extremely physical as a runner. He wants to run through people if he can, which is something nice to see. It's just whether or not the offensive line can open up some of those holes. They've been much better this year. They were better last year than the year before. This year, I think they're doing better than they did last year. But again, what does that look like now against a Big Ten opponent who's going to bring a different physicality, bigger guys overall? It's just a deeper team when you get back to this level, as opposed to what Nebraska saw against Northern Iowa. But you're not going to see the quarterback run game. And I know that's going to look very different for anyone who watched the game in person down there in Illinois. But you're not going to see, you might get a little bit with Raiola on a scramble. He has shown that he can do some of that, but he's not pulling the ball down and running it as quickly. He'll throw the ball away. He'll find a way to extend the play, but he's going to throw the ball. So the run game will not include a lot of the quarterback trying to be mobile, get outside the pocket, and move the chains.
So that is distinctly different than what Illinois faced with Jalen Daniels of Kansas, who was willing to go out and grab you 20 yards and also used that same foot speed and quickness to extend plays, as you're talking about. So you'll see Raiola extend plays with his feet, not necessarily looking to get out and run.
Yeah, if he's got the space, he'll go, like against Colorado. He had I think a 15-yard run. Didn't see a guy coming up behind him, got a little bit lit up. but he will, if he has to, in the same way that, I know we don't want to do this for every single comparison for Dylan Raiola, but in the same way that Patrick Mahomes doesn't want to necessarily run the ball 5 times a game, but if there's a first down to be picked up and he has the angle and he can get there, Raiola is going to do that as well. But primarily your run game is going to come from Dante Dowdell, Ramir Johnson. And we saw Emmett Johnson get a little bit more run this last week as well. And if you go back to the first game against UTEP, where you had the 4 oarsmen, as we like to call them, you had Gabe Ervin as primarily the short down back. He got 2 touchdowns, and I don't think he had 7 yards in the game.
Now we look at the offensive line. Now, Illinois has struggled stopping the run this year. I have a concern that will be a consistent challenge for the Illini. They have a nice starting front 7 but their depth at the defensive line is not what you would like for a Big Ten team. And I think they're going to have to play some games to prevent Nebraska from having as much success there going up the middle. What kind of offensive line does Nebraska have this year?
They're better than I think they were last year. They've also had to deal with some injuries or some guys missing games right now. The biggest one for news this week is that Henry Lutovsky is going to continue to start at right guard. Micah Mazuka, who the transfer in from Florida, and people probably remember there was a really good still shot of him getting in a fight, big old lineman. Mazuka started out the year at that position because Lutovsky has had a little bit of a history with some injuries, some nagging things, but Henry Lutovsky is the guy starting there. He will stand out. He is 6'6", 320 pounds. Nebraska's offensive line is fairly large when you go across there, especially when you get to the right tackle, Bryce Benhart, who's 6'9". But these are going to be some big guys who have been in the program. And yes, you brought in Mazuka as the transfer. You've brought in some other guys over the last couple of years, but these are primarily guys who have been here. There are times where it doesn't look great in some of the pass protection, or every now and then somebody misses an assignment. But we haven't seen that so far this year to a great extent. But like we have to continue to reiterate, that's UTEP, Colorado, and Northern Iowa.
And then from a pass catching standpoint, wide receiver, tight end core, what does Nebraska have to offer there?
Just about everybody. Dylan Raiola, because you do have a talented quarterback who can throw the ball all over the place. And not to say that Nebraska hasn't had talented quarterbacks over the last several years. They've just been they've been kind of a lot of dual threat guys. They haven't been a primary, they're field general passing the ball in the same way that Dylan Raiola is. So you've got your at tight end Thomas Fedoni, you've got Nate Borkercher, and so those guys have primarily been there. A recruit who came in, he's a freshman this year. He was brought in as a tight end, but in order to get him on the field, he's playing receiver. And as a matter of fact, he's listed number 2 as a slot receiver this week, and it's Carter Nelson. Big old kid. He was a thrower in high school on the track and field team, 6'5" out of the slot. And so he's going to get some matchups that are going to be a little bit different. He got his first touchdown of his young career last week. And then you get a little bit further to the outside. You brought in transfers Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nayor. Nayor's got a couple of touchdowns this year. Banks had a touchdown in the season opener. So you've got a lot of guys out there, as well as Janiron Bonner, also a true freshman or an underclassman in the slot. And he is just super dynamic is what he's been. So there are a lot of weapons out there I haven't even mentioned some of their guys that are also 6'5" and 6'6", like Malachi Coleman and Jalen Lloyd and other guys that have run all over the place and are just super, super athletic. But Raiola is going to find the open guy. So Nebraska has weapons plus somebody who will try to find the open guy. And through 3 games, Raiola only has 1 turnover. And it was a 50-50 ball that could have gone Nebraska's way, but it took 80 throws for Raiola to have his first turnover. No fumbles so far this year.
Yeah, that quarterback protecting the ball is huge. Luke Altmaier has not thrown an interception yet this season. He is, ranked in the top 25 in passing efficiency. I've heard a couple people say he's trying a little too hard not to throw interceptions and may not be as aggressive as he used to be, but we've seen some excellent downfield passing from the Illini. When you're looking at that Nebraska defense, I thought last year it was a physical defense that played hard all the time and delivered blows and then worried about where the ball was afterwards. How are they looking this season through their first 3 games?
They are still delivering a lot of blows. It is still an extremely physical defense for defensive coordinator Tony White, who a lot of Husker fans were glad to have back because he did have head coaching opportunities. He's got a lot of connections to places that had head coach openings last year, one of them being UCLA. So Nebraska fans were happy to see not only did he not go somewhere, but he had opportunities at the highest level of college football, in a place that has a large population base and was going to be in the Big Ten. So there were opportunities, but Nebraska brought a lot of people back. That is something that when you got into the offseason and saw folks hitting the transfer portal, Nebraska didn't have that. They also didn't have guys go potentially get drafted, and they would have gotten drafted. Maybe it would have been the 4th, 5th, 6th round, but they would have been drafted. Guys like Ty Robinson, Nash Hutmaker, like these guys would have been drafted. They would be on NFL rosters right now, but they didn't go. And those guys are up front on the defensive line, along with Jamari Butler, Cam Lenhart, a lot of really talented guys in the middle of that defense. In the secondary, who are going to have to deal with some of those downfield throws, because it seems like Illinois has been more aggressive in those explosive plays this year than they were a year ago. Someone like Tommy Hill, who's getting some first-round draft grades through the first few games. He did have a pick 6 against Shedeur Sanders in the Colorado game a couple of weeks ago, but he is a guy who is extremely good at the cornerback position. Opposite of him is Marquise Buford. Again, another guy who can read the ball really well, but those guys want to go hit someone too. The linebackers want to go hit someone. John Bullock, Mekhi Bayer, who had to miss the first half of the game against Northern Iowa because he had a targeting that happened against Colorado. Not in the targeting of the sense where you go, yeah, he went to take someone's head off. It just happened to be, okay, there was some, I can't remember if it was like shoulder pad to helmet and someone was getting down. It looked more incidental, but ultimately it was targeting. He had to miss half a game. Isaac Gifford, like they're just guys that not only do they play well, they want to be extremely physical, but they've been in this defense. They've been here at Nebraska for a few years. And Matt Rule has talked about, in order to be successful in the Big Ten, you have to get old and stay old. And Nebraska has found a way to get old, stay old, and have really good guys in those positions. So through 3 games, they've given up 20 total points and only 2 touchdowns. So the defense is something that Nebraska continues to hang their hat on. But although they did have the playmakers from Colorado, especially in the passing game, and Nebraska held them off well. And I know the run game hasn't been there to what Illinois fans would maybe have come to know under Brett Bielema the last couple of years. Nebraska hasn't had to deal with those playmakers on the outside and a semblance of a run game. So that'll be a test for the Black Shirts.
Successful teams do certain things. And one of the things that a successful team does is they go ahead and they have the opportunity to win games on the road and beat ranked teams. So both teams have an opportunity to beat a ranked team this Friday. One team has an opportunity to do it on the road. But one way or the other, I think one of these 2 teams is going to have a good season this year. And I'm not certain that even this game is going to be the determinant, because it's a long season. But boy, whichever one of these teams can start off 4-0 really helps them in terms of reaching that bowl game, which again, in the past, Nebraska wouldn't care about. It would be an automatic, but we've had some coaching challenges. Illinois has had numerous coaching challenges, so they're looking for a bowl game. I think this is going to be a primetime matchup that will attract a lot of people. When Illinois is good, they do very well in the ratings. The problem is they're not good that often. Nebraska does pretty good in the ratings because they have a fanatical fan base. So I think this will be a very highly watched Friday night matchup. But how are things going when we look at the special teams for Nebraska?
It's been a little hit and miss. And I think that's going to be an opportunity for Illinois. Nebraska's kickoff coverage has not given up the big play for a touchdown, but they have given up some significant returns. And you saw Nebraska start out against Colorado, and they kicked it to the playmakers. And so Colorado was able to set up in Nebraska territory at one point. You saw Northern Iowa get a decent little return. So, and you actually had the first kickoff for Nebraska of the year went out of bounds. So it's been a little shaky on the kickoff part, the kickoff coverage. The kick return hasn't necessarily threatened, but no, most of the kickoffs have gone out of bounds. Nebraska hasn't had a lot of opportunity, and if you're not giving up touchdowns or points, they're not kicking off to you a whole lot either. In the punt game, one of them got blocked. They've had one blocked, but for the most part, Brian Buschini looking a lot better this year than he did last year. So the punt game really, really good as long as the protection is there, and it only slipped up the one time. Place kicker has been an interesting adventure. Tristan Alvano continues to hold that position. They've been changing up who is the long snapper for that. Usually when you think place kicker, you're like, okay, well, can he make them, or is he making them or missing them? And it's been the snapping issues, and that's gotten a little bit into Alvano's head, but that wasn't so much an issue against Northern Iowa, as he was able to knock a couple through, perfect on extra points as well. And then Nebraska's punt return just hasn't been a threat for a decade, it seems, but they do have talented guys back there. The coverage has just been really good. And Mike, you guys know this in the Big Ten, the punters are really good. The punt coverage is really good. If you get anyone who can do 15 yards on a return, you're like, great, good. You picked up a first down and then some. Offense, get out there.
To be honest with you, if I was coaching in the Big Ten, I would be more concerned about, let's not let the ball bounce where we lose 20 yards.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say fair catch the ball and let's just call it a day.
So that's been a giant difference for Nebraska this year, is getting those punt return guys to not let the ball bounce and roll. If it does hit the turf, they are finding a way to go, okay, is it stopping? What kind of bounce did it take? Or grab it and cover up to where you go, no, it's no return, but you didn't lose 20 yards on the roll. So that's been a big difference for Nebraska's punt returners this year compared to the last couple.
Oh, it totally drives me crazy to watch a guy give up. Now, back in olden days, you always had an up man, and that was a guy who had good hands and no speed. So like when I was in high school, I was the up guy. My job, and I got yelled at, is if the ball hit the ground and rolled. My job was to fair catch anything that didn't go to the punt returner.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think there's a beauty to that, because a bad punt, you've seen it 100 times, rolls, you kick the ball 20 yards and then it rolls 30, but goes down as a 50-yard punt that didn't have to be.
Right.
I'm a huge fan of just getting somebody who will fair catch everyone and don't let it roll. That's a success in my book. Obviously, you're a Nebraska guy, and Nebraska's playing at home with a formidable home field advantage with the 400th sellout in a row. What are you thinking this game looks like if you had to look into a crystal ball and tell us what your expectations are for Friday night?
I think Illinois becomes the first team to get 2 touchdowns on Nebraska. But I also think Nebraska controls enough of the ball that it just wears on the Illinois defense, especially running the ball. I think Nebraska ends up with someone running for over 100 yards, probably Dowdell. And I think when I look at my score prediction, it's probably going to be 27-14 Nebraska. I think there's especially those wideouts for Illinois. And Matt Rule mentioned it this week, that Illinois has more explosive plays than Nebraska has from the offensive side of the ball, but Nebraska has also had all 3 games over at halftime. They haven't necessarily had to do anything in the second half besides run the ball and chew clock. So I think Illinois does get a couple of explosive plays, finds the end zone, but I think Nebraska just wears on that Illinois defense to where they're able to chew up a lot more clock. And without having a turnover machine at quarterback that Nebraska has maybe been used to at different times, not necessarily Harburg last year, although there were the turnovers in the second half that could have made things a little bit more interesting. I do think Nebraska just leans on that run game, and the defense, despite a couple of big plays, bows up for the rest of the game. And I'll go with 27-14 Nebraska.
Yeah, that's fair. I think it's going to be a challenge for the Illini. I think it will be very interesting what wrinkles Aaron Henry puts into the defense. And of course, he works that as the coordinator. Obviously, there's a lot of coaches that participate in that. Brett Bielema runs a fairly democratic ship in terms of letting people put in their input. Brett Bielema as well. But I would be trying to figure out how I could confuse a freshman quarterback, give them different looks, different things to make him think. People know that when you train, the purpose of training is so you go out and you perform without thinking. If you can get a dominant athlete to have to think, then you've slowed him or her down, and you've maybe made it a little more equal for the less athletic players out there. And I think Illinois needs to try to slow it down. And when you're a freshman, let's face it, things that will confound Raiola this year, next year, won't phase him a bit. You do have to learn. You can't know something before you learn something. And I would try to take advantage of that as the first big time defense that Nebraska runs into. I would try to take as much advantage of that as I possibly could were I the Illini.
Yeah, I think that is the priority number one for Illinois in this game. Obviously, you don't want to turn over the ball. That goes without saying. But if Illinois' defense can get in Dylan Raiola's head, if they can, like you said, make him think, if they can force a turnover and get something out there to where he's thinking about things in a way that this isn't what we had on tape. What do I do here? Not to say that maybe he doesn't rise to the challenge on some of those things, but to me, that is the best chance Illinois has in stealing this game from the Huskers on Friday night in Nebraska's Memorial Stadium.
Illinois, by the way, had a one-game sellout streak going with Kansas, but then lost it at Central Michigan.
Way to go, Central Michigan.
So they're only 400 behind Nebraska in the streak.
It's good to have goals. It's good to have goals.
Yeah, that is just crazy number when you start figuring out. When was the last game that wasn't sold out, just as a trivia here?
1962.
Oh, wow. That's pre not just Illini guys, but it's pre all the guys who are Illini guys, because none of us was born in 1962. We were all after that.
It is pre my dad.
Wow. I'm going to wish I hadn't asked this question, but what year was your dad born in?
1965.
Okay, good. He's still older than me. That's awesome. All right. Any final thoughts on this game? Anything I didn't ask you, or any closing remarks that you have for us?
No, I just think I think this is a great litmus test for both programs on where they're at, undefeated and ranked early in the season after coming in unranked. Obviously, Illinois wishes that, I'm sure as you guys think as well, that Kansas game looked a little bit better, and the Jayhawks not losing this past weekend. For Nebraska, haven't really been challenged over the first three through that non-conference, but there is a race. It's no longer, can you win your division? Can you be top two in your division? Can you get to the Big Ten championship game? Of course, those things are still, other than the divisions, that's still going to be a goal for programs and these programs as well. But can you be top five in the Big Ten? I think we'll see from both of these programs. Can somebody separate themselves? Does it become a blowout? Does someone really go out there and put on a show on Friday, whether it is Illinois or Nebraska? Can they show that, hey, they're a little bit more of a real deal than people thought a month ago? But I think both of these programs have a real shot at potentially making Friday a turning point into, can you go be top five in the Big Ten Conference? Because if you are top five, you are in the conversation for the college football playoff. It used to be, if you're top five, okay, what kind of decent bowl game are you going to? But now, if you're top five, especially if you're top four, you are in the conversation for the college football playoff. I love that the expansion has allowed that to happen for more teams. And I think both of these teams Friday night in Lincoln are in that conversation at chasing a top five, top six spot in the league.
And that is why I've said this before, but it will go to 16 teams, the college football playoff, and there will be a guarantee for both the SEC and the Big Ten to have 5 automatic qualifiers, which then allows your major powers to get into the CFP. And it also allows a dark horse.
Mhm.
And that way, a team like Nebraska on the way up could make it in as the fifth team. Illinois, like the 2001 or the 2007 team, could be that fifth team. Iowa, without any offense, could be that fifth team. And I really believe that when they go in a couple of years, they go to a 16 instead of 12. You need to have those big conferences having enough teams in the chase to make it worth spending the NIL money.
Mhm.
Because if you expect a bunch of teams to spend a ton of NIL money just to watch Michigan, USC, Penn State, and Ohio State go to the CFP, pretty soon that juice isn't going to be worth the squeeze for those boosters.
Mhm.
And you have to have that fifth one. And that's why I think they'll go to 16.
Yeah, I'm excited to obviously where that potentially goes down the road, but first up this Friday, can one of these teams separate themselves and further make the case that they should be one of those teams for this year in the conversation?
Yes, and as the early odds, it shows that Vegas definitely has confidence in the Huskers. We will see if the Illini can do two things. Neither one have they been consistent at this year. One is they have not been consistent at running the ball, although very, very out of character, they started running fairly effectively off tackle against Central Michigan, which is not a stable of Bielema ball the last couple of years. And can they stop the run, which will be problematic because Kansas was an extremely good run team. And it really felt like with a new offensive coordinator, he forgot to run the ball. And they schemed Jalen Daniels into reading a defense that wasn't there.
Mhm.
And he chose to pass when the Illini wanted to lure him into passing. I don't know if they'll be able to do that to Dylan Raiola.
Yeah, because Kansas wanted to live a little bit with that RPO, and Nebraska just doesn't do that with Raiola at quarterback. So I am intrigued to see what the Illinois defense does come out looking like, and what kind of adjustments happen over those 60 minutes.
Yeah, this should be a fantastic game. I hope it's close and competitive all the way. We want the Illini to win, but we want the Big Ten to look good, and a close game would be fantastic for both programs, knowing that only one team can win.
On a Friday night. Love it.
Yeah, this is great. Well, thank you so much, Kaleb, for coming on again. HuskerMax, you can go there, and if you want Husker information out the wazoo, they will provide it. They have a ton of Husker-related, Big Ten-related information. Make sure you go to HuskerMax. Thank you so much, sir, for coming on.
Thanks so much.
Red Grange wasn't just a football player. He was a legend. Discover the untold story of Illini great Red Grange in a new novel by Doug Vilhard called The Golden Age of Red. This captivating book takes you back to the 1920s when a humble young Illinois player transformed into the galloping ghost and electrified the nation. Get your copy of The Golden Age of Red by Doug Vilhard today. Available on Amazon and wherever books are sold.
And again, big thanks to Kaleb Henry for coming on the show today. We really appreciate him coming, and getting guests like that hopefully makes for a good experience for you, our subscribers and listeners. If you enjoy what you get here on Eye on the Illini, you will really want to try to check out our two radio shows. One is Big Sports Radio. It's our weekly Big Ten-centric show that talks about everything Big Ten, and we will throw in the big sporting events of the weekend as well because we like to watch TV. You can also check out the IlliniGuys Sports Spectacular. It's our weekly 2-hour Illini-centric show. If you're an Illinois fan, if you're a Big Ten fan, it's another great show. Both shows are Brad Sturdy, Larry Smith, and myself. Now, of course, for those people who've been around the Big Ten for a while, Brad Sturdy has been covering Illinois sports for over 20 years. And those people who've been following Larry Smith's career, he was on CNN as a sports anchor back in the day when CNN had sports. He's covered multiple Final Fours, Super Bowls, big events, you name it, Larry's been there. And of course, now you probably recognize him from the WNBA on ION TV. You can see him there every week doing the pre-game show on Friday nights. So tune in there also to find Larry. And of course, if you enjoy this, you can go to IlliniGuys.com and be a member of that community. You get all the articles ahead of time. You get the full articles. There's a lot of advantages to subscribing. You get all the podcasts, but most importantly, you get the message boards. That is what allows you to not only communicate with Illini fans around the world, but you can also ask Larry or Brad or Matt or Ked or myself questions about, well, what did you mean by this? What did you mean by that? If you are looking at a website and you're just reading the stories, that's great. But wouldn't it be great if you could communicate regularly with the authors to understand the nuances of the story? That's what you can do at IlliniGuys.com. 27 cents a day. It's all it costs. We haven't raised prices since this started, and we would love to have you be a member. Until next time, go Illini.